I want to welcome everyone to our open house, our information session. My name is Bridget Doyle, and I'm the Associate Director here at the University of Illinois College of Medicine Admissions Office. And I'm here with my colleagues to talk to you about our school, the opportunities on all of our campuses, and what I think is a really unique medical school curriculum. I know a lot of you are interested in admissions too. You might already know that you want to apply to us, which is great. So we'll make sure to cover a little about that admissions piece at the end. But please remember, jump back on April 21st. We're going to do a deep dive into how to apply for the next cycle, and you can find that on our website. We'll drop everything in the chat at the end. I want to do a few quick housekeeping reminders before we jump into what we'll talk about today, which is all about UICOM. This webinar, as you probably heard entering, is being recorded, and we'll make it available to you in about 2 weeks. And since this is a Zoom webinar platform, all of our participants have been muted and your cameras are off. We are covering a lot of content, including a lot of questions that you submitted when you registered. So I'm going to ask that you save all of your questions, write them down if it comes to you on an earlier slide especially. Save it until the end. We're going to have all of our staff members, those people looking at applications and convincing you to apply. We're going to have everyone on at the very end, and then you can submit your question using the Q&A function you see at the bottom of your screen. So ignore the chat, use that Q&A function that you see at the bottom of your screen. And I'll let you know when it's time to start submitting your questions. I'd like to start with where our audience is joining us from. It's not uncommon, since we are an Illinois public institution that educates about 1 in 6 healthcare professionals in this state. We have a lot of Illinois applicants and students, so it's not uncommon for us to, even on our webinars, to see a lot of participation from Illinois. And for those of you joining as either applicants, postgrads, seniors, that's usually the majority of our audiences, since the timing to start applying to medical school is approaching. But I always like to give kudos to our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors for joining us as well. Getting to know schools during an information session like this is really beneficial. Now, in the before times, we would refer to something as this as open houses, and we would bring you to campus, invite you to campus, but this is a wonderful first step to get to know us. And I see we do have a few pre-med advisors and other staff joining, so I want to say hi, and it's good to see you all again as well. Most of our webinars start with something like this too, and I love this slide because we ask it on purpose when you register. We want to know where you're coming from, because everyone's journey to medicine is different. It can be traditional, it can be a winding road. You might come to us straight from undergrad or from another career you've spent decades in. And I like to show this graph because it shows that while many of you are focusing on biology and the sciences, those numbers on the graph you can see are pretty high. We have others turning to medicine after spending time in coursework like accounting, anthropology, English, public health, and so on. I've even seen theater majors eventually turn to medicine. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amiri, who's going to introduce us to the mission of UICOM. Dr. Amiri?
Thank you so much, Bridget. Good evening, everyone. I am Layla Miri, serving as the Assistant Dean for Admissions and Recruitment at University of Illinois College of Medicine, and I too would like to welcome you to the first of our webinar series, really to kick off the new application cycle. We always start our conversations with the mission because the mission is really the bedrock of what we do. It informs everything that we do in the college. And as you learn more about us tonight, I'm going to ask you to keep this mission in mind. And I know that you can read this as well as I can, but I'll read it with you. Our mission is to advance health for everyone through outstanding education, research, clinical care, and social responsibility. And what I'm going to ask you to focus on is where we start and where we end the mission. What's in the middle education, research, clinical care. You will see that and hear that from many of the medical schools that you're interested in and that you're doing research on, because really that's the tripartite mission of most academic medical centers. We start with to advance health for everyone without any qualifiers. We are proud to serve individuals who would not receive health care otherwise, and that extends to the faculty, staff that we have here, and to the students that we invite to join our program. So we look for individuals who are interested in that part of our mission, which is the responsibility to provide health care for everyone. And we'd like to close with social responsibility. That has been really a cornerstone of UIC in general as an institution, and specifically for the College of Medicine. Now, you might know that we are a institution with 3 different campuses. So we are proud to have a Chicago campus, a Peoria campus, and a Rockford campus. And you will hear now from each of our assistant directors on our different campuses, introducing you to some of the unique features that we have on each of our campuses. We will go in alphabetical order. So I will start with Kia, who's our assistant director on the Chicago campus.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy you've joined us today. As Dr. Mary said, my name is Kiantra Loza, and I am the Assistant Director of Admissions for the University of Illinois College of Medicine, Chicago campus. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our Chicago campus specifically. The Chicago campus is the home to the Simulation and Integrative Learning Institute. This institute houses 2,000 unique learners per year. We also house the Robotic Surgical Simulation Center. And this is what we found has been very important moving as we've been a part of our pandemic, because it's become an international hub of learning. UIC is an R1 institution. On our Chicago campus, the students have the opportunity to participate in multidisciplinary collaboration in both clinical care and research. So we have 7 disciplines: medicine, public health, dentistry, pharmacy, nursing, applied health sciences, and social work. We have advising houses that allow our students to receive mentoring from both our faculty and our staff members. And lastly, but certainly not least, we are located right in the heart of the Illinois Medical District. And now I'm going to hand it over to our assistant director on our Peoria campus, Mindy Miller.
Thank you so much, Kia. Hi, I'm Mindy Miller, and I'm going to talk to you about our Peoria campus. We're located almost in the middle of the state of Illinois. And some of the highlights we have that are special to our Peoria campus include a program that is only on our Peoria campus called the ELITE program, which stands for Early Longitudinal Immersion Interprofessional Team Experience, which is why most of us call it ELITE, because it's a mouthful to say. But it is essentially early clinical experience for our starting with our M1 year. In pre-COVID times, our M1s would start in the ELITE experience as early as October of their first year. With COVID going on this year, our M1s didn't get to start ELITE experiences until this January, February timeframe. The other thing that is special about Peoria is a scholarly concentration program called ERGMed, which is Innovations in Rural and Global Medicine. This is where students can explore medicine relating to rural aspects of medicine at the global level. Some of our students have traveled as far as Uganda for experiences with this program. This is something that you would apply to upon matriculation to the Peoria campus. And then we have the Rural Student Physician Program, which is part of your 3rd year clinical rotation, in which you do several weeks in a rural setting, usually about an hour to 2 hours or so from the Peoria campus, and you work one-on-one with a physician there. Something special that we have on our Peoria campus is our JUMP Simulation Center, which is a 6-story virtual simulation center for education of our students that includes things such as a virtual operating room, a virtual a VR lab, and some dissection labs as well. It does replicate all the patient care experiences that a student would experience in their training. I'm going to now turn it over to Lori Keener in our Rockford campus.
Thanks, Mindy. Hello, everyone. I'm Lori Keener. I'm the Assistant Director on our Rockford campus, and we are about 80 miles west of Chicago in the northern part of the state. So our Rockford campus has a robust research program. We are actually the home to the Shingrix vaccine for the shingles virus. So we do have, and we have more research coming, including a heartworm vaccine for dogs, which we're all really excited about in Rockford. We also have interdisciplinary campus opportunities. Medicine, MBT is a master's in biotechnology program, nursing, and College of Pharmacy, all housed in Rockford. We are also the home to the National Center for Rural Health Professions. This is where we train physicians to go back into practice in rural communities, which most of them have come from a rural community and wish to go back there and practice. We have 3 teaching hospitals in Rockford, and something very special on the Rockford campus is that we have a Prometric Center housed within our campus on the 3rd floor. We do sit for step 1, 2, and you can come back and sit for step 3 right on our Rockford campus. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Mary.
Thanks so much, Lori. Okay, after that introduction, let's talk a little bit about our curriculum, which is an integrated curriculum. So when you think about our curriculum, this is a great graphic. So think about the foundational knowledge of medicine. So that is all of the basic science that you have to understand, which feeds into the clinical practice of medicine, right? And that is, how is the patient presenting in clinic? What are some of the indicators that we see? How do you do a differential diagnosis? So together, these two form the core of the curriculum. Then embedded in this core are the 3 themes that you see running across horizontally on the screen: health and society, healthcare systems, and professional development. So when you start medical school, basically your life changes overnight, right? So the day before you start, you are a pre-med student, and once you start, you are a professional student. And from that point, your career begins to develop. And so how do you understand your identity as a physician along the way? How do you think about the residency that you want to have? How do you think about what type of career you want to have? Where do you see yourself in this progression as becoming a physician? So that's the professional development piece. Healthcare systems, we need you to understand vulnerable populations. We need you to understand how healthcare systems work. What does it look like? What does it mean for care of the patient? In health and society, again, how do we understand vulnerable populations? What are the things that we need to think about? And how do these things all come together in order to help you become the best physician that you can be? So that's the ultimate framework of the curriculum as we go through it. We think of our curriculum in phases rather than years, and we think of it in phases as the phases that you're developing that professional identity and you are learning how to become a physician. So think about it in terms of blocks, okay, and in terms of phases. So we have 3 phases. Phase 1 is the first year and a half of medical school. That's where you're working on the basic foundational understanding that you have, understanding what it looks like in the clinical setting, understanding how to deliver a clinical diagnosis. We start off with a block 0 that's not even shown on this graph, and that is just making sure that everyone's speaking science at the level that we want them to speak. It is a online module and it's a voluntary module, but I will let you know the students that complete the module and take all the tests do very well in the curriculum. We start off with equilibrium and homeostasis for block 1. Then block 2, we start talking about pathogenesis and disequilibrium, okay? And then with block 3, the integrated curriculum begins. And so this is where you're learning the underlying physiology, biochemistry, if there's microbiology, whatever it is that is included in that body organ, okay? Also, you're working in the clinics, you're also working in the cadaver lab, you're also in the radiology lab. So all of these things are together providing a picture to you of the patient and what is going on in that particular organ system. And this progresses through all of the blocks until you get all the way to where you are the first year and a half of medical school, where we have a nice break for students, about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on when they want to take the STEP exam. They take a break, self-study, take the step and then transition into the next phase. The only other thing that I want to point out on this slide, and don't worry about these slides, at the end of the webinar today, we will drop into the chat a PDF of our recruitment brochure, and in that you will have the schematic for the medical curriculum and much of what you're going to hear throughout the remainder of our presentation. So embedded then in these blocks are the themes that I just mentioned to you. So professional development, health, illness, and society, the foundational knowledge of medicine, healthcare systems, and basically the clinical practice of medicine. On the bottom, you see two bars. One is docs, doctoring and clinical skills, and this is really the art of medicine. Okay, so how do you set it up so that you're comfortable enough to go into a room, meet an individual for the first time, ask them a lot of personal probing questions, even touch them, and for it to not be awkward for you and for you to be able to put your patient at ease. Okay, so that's where the art of medicine comes through. And that's what you're picking up in this gold bar, you know, for the first year and a half of medical school. And then there's the medical colloquial courses, which happen on Fridays. And these are add-ons to what's going on in the curriculum, generally things worthy of notice that are exciting and interesting. And again, connected to the curriculum. And then sometimes if there's something going on, like a pandemic, that'll be a new colloquial topic that'll be added and our students will participate in it. So that's phase one, the first year and a half of medical school. So right now, our students who are in their second year of medical school are in that phase where we are working on them taking their step exams and preparing to join us for what we call phase two and phase three. So phase two starts a little bit early for us. This is that third year of medical school with all the clinical rotations that you might see in the curriculums of other medical schools that you're looking at. This will start sometime late April, early May of the second year that a student is here with us, right? And it starts their third year of medical school, actually. So that's why it gets a little bit confusing. This is 48 weeks long. 44 weeks are required and mandatory rotations. In the rotations that you see here on this slide, there's 4 weeks of electives. And these 4 weeks of electives will vary from student to student. It could be an opportunity for a student to take a couple of additional rotations and things that they're deciding between. So let's say you're deciding between plastic surgery and general surgery, or you're deciding between med peds and peds, or med peds and internal medicine. Wouldn't it be helpful if you could have a couple of extra weeks of rotations just to get more exposure? It might be that you're working on a dual degree, and Bridget will talk about those in a moment, and maybe there's some work that you're wrapping up for your dual degree or research project. But anyway, it's up to the students, and they will work with their advisors, as you heard about earlier, to determine what are the best things for them to be engaged with during this time. And then once you're done with phase two, you go into phase three of our curriculum, which is the last year or the fourth year of medical school. What I really want to highlight in our fourth year are the pathways that we have for our students, and quoting a faculty member, the pathways are designed to allow our students to run into their residencies rather than step into their residencies. And what do we mean by that? We mean that you get additional experiences that will help your hands and your mind when you're starting with your rotations, with your internship and your residency. So the surgical pathway has specific types of additional experiences that are recommended for students who have an interest in going into surgery, right? So if you're going into OB-GYN, plastic surgery, anesthesia, radiology, what are the type of experiences that you should have so you have that additional enriched learning to help you with the residency, in contrast to an individual who's going into the medical pathway, which may be internal medicine, family medicine, psychiatry, for example, or peds. What are the type of experiences that you would have there? Okay, that's a quick overview of our curriculum, and now I am going to hand it over to Bridget, who will speak with you about our curricular add-ons.
Thank you, Dr. Amiri. Let me just go ahead and start my video here. So yes, let's dive in. Let's talk about this portion of our secondary application, really. And it's the opportunity to customize your curriculum with us. And that's really through the scholarly concentration programs. Don't be overwhelmed. Our scholarly concentration programs, they're optional. They're optional enrichment programs. These are not joint degree programs. I'll get to those in just a second. And there will be research and projects associated with them. Since they're optional, about a third of our students opt to participate in them. I'm not going to read this aloud to you. They have really great titles that are pretty self-explanatory, but I want to draw your attention to the fact that some of our scholarly concentration programs are only located on certain campuses. And you'll see, for example, our global medicine and innovation medicine programs are only located in Chicago. Our innovations in rural global medicine is only located in Peoria. And our rural medicine program is only located in Rockford. You'll of course need to be a student here with us before you're accepted to one of these programs. In fact, our ERGMed and RSPP programs are post-matriculation programs. And a lot of their interviews will happen after the application deadline. And let me just advance slides just a minute here. Now, we have this question a lot. Can I apply to all of these? Can I be a part of all of these? If more than one interests you here, go ahead and apply to it. If you apply to multiple, you can interview with multiple, but you will eventually need to select just one of these scholarly concentration programs. And you can even do a scholarly concentration program and do a joint degree program at the same time. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Now we have, as you can see from this screen, about 4 different types of master's degrees. And I want to point out that these are not available at the time of application. So you're not going to see this in the AMCAS or in your secondary application with us. We want you to join us here first as medical students. Get your feet wet, engage with the curriculum, adjust maybe after a few exams, and then start thinking about these joint degrees. We want you to have, conversations with your faculty mentors and find out if a joint degree is really necessary. If, for example, without an MBA, your career plans are totally dashed, we want you to apply. And all degrees here are 5-year programs. The MPH was actually just approved for a 4-year program. It's available your first year. And once you're in your 3rd year with us as medical students, you'll separate from the College of Medicine, transition to being a full-time student in these programs. And once that's done, you'll come back to medicine for your final year with the classmate from the year behind you. And I'll also mention that bioengineering that you see on the screen here is restricted to the Chicago campus. Admissions vary by program, but I have wonderful news that you don't need to take entrance exams, so you don't need to take the GMAT or other entrance exams, which I hope will be a relief after studying and cramming and working towards your MCATs. Just a moment here, let me advance the slides. Okay, now I want to take a moment and let you know something that my colleague Kia mentioned, which is that UIC is an R1 institution. So we attract a lot of students who want to do research or who like to continue doing research as they go through their medical education. So in addition to our master's programs that I mentioned previously, we do have an official NIH funded MST program. It's one of 45 in the nation, and it's open to current students up until the end of their 2nd year. It can be competitive. We do have about 300 or so applications each year for about 10 to 12 spots. So it is a relatively small program. And as you heard from Dr. Amiri earlier, our unique curriculum is going to allow for you to spend time. It allows you to be flexible to continue your research, especially if the type of research that you're doing is putting yourself in front of patients. And it's also important to note that our MSTP students have really high success rates securing extramural funding. It's really important to practice that exercise of applying and getting extramural funding, which eventually helps with strong match results for the students of this program, which isn't always typical of an MST program. And you can see from this slide, The students of this program come from all over, from Illinois, from the Midwest, and also spanning the coasts. We get this question a lot, so I want to take a moment and address it here, especially because it is important to consider the type of support you're going to be getting from your medical school, especially as you start going to more and more of these open houses. And that's, once I'm a student here, once I'm a medical student, how are you going to support me? And we look at this the same way we look at your application. So we have at any time on all three campuses about 13 to 1,400 students. And we think about supporting you in a way that's holistic. So we think about the things you would need to feel supported as a student, and think about them yourselves as you're looking at medical schools. Academically, of course, there's tutoring, there's a learning community that you'll enter as matriculants, but also there's support services like financial aid advising. We have advising houses with faculty mentors, and we even have an urban health program, which is one of the webinars I'll promote at the end of this. Our urban health program addresses the unique needs of our underrepresented students in medicine. And of course, all of the things you see here, there's even more online. And it's in addition to other group learning opportunities that are built into the curriculum, like our team-based learning that you'll be a part of with other students. So you have that social connection, that social support, and of course, a myriad of other ways to get involved, from free clinics to specific interest groups around medicine, singing groups, you name it. There's an opportunity for you to have social support as well. And Kia, I'm going to toss it to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bridget. So now I'm going to go over our class of 2024 overview. We are so proud of how this class came together. We have 53% female, 47% male in our class. We have 34% UICOM students. This is one of the largest percentages in the nation, so we are very proud of that. We have 79% Illinois residents, and our students come to us from 25 different states around the country. And just to name a few, we have Arizona, California, Ohio, Texas, all of the above. Our students speak 25 languages from Aramaic to Urdu. And this year we had 7 international students that come to us from Canada, China, El Salvador, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Rwanda. And lastly, our students come to us from 106 different institutions. And now I'm just going to go into our mission. So I know that you all seen this earlier, and Dr. Amiri went over it earlier, but I just want to remind you of it. So this mission statement guides our admissions processes. So when we review your applications, when we review your personal statements, as well as the activities that you've participated in outside of the classroom, we're always looking for students who align with our mission. So here at UICOM, we utilize a holistic admissions process. And by holistic admissions, this means that we give equal weight to your experience, your attributes, and your metrics. We've gone ahead and listed that AAMC definition above. I won't read it to you, but we felt it was important to see how they define it. So when you're looking on the left here at this graphic, I want to focus on the 3 tiers that you see: experiences, attributes, and metrics. So for your experience, when we're looking at your application, those are the activities that you have intentionally sought out as you have prepared for medicine. So different life experiences, cultural events, your educational background, etc. When we're looking at your attributes, these are personal characteristics that make you unique. Sometimes it can be, your sexual orientation, or it can be your race, or it can be any other languages you may speak. Now we're talking about your metrics. These are your grades and your MCATs. Your grades tell us how well you can handle medical school in the science curriculum. And then your MCAT is going to predict how well you can manage standardized tests. So we will encompass all 3 of these as we review your applications. And now I will hand it over to Lori.
Thanks, Kia. So as Kia mentioned, some of the attributes and things that we look at in holistic review, we just wanted to kind of go in a little bit more depth about those things. So for instance, clinical experience for an average accepted student, we're looking at a wide range, somewhere between 600, 2,700 hours. And these are a variety of settings. So it could be an EMT, a CNA, shadowing, things like that. These all tell in the application really explain who you are as an applicant and the kinds of things you're doing to set yourself up for a career in medicine. Research, about 1,600 hours on average. That's bench and clinical included. For leadership, an average of 700 hours, and these can include the things you see here, teaching organizations. We also, if you have founded any kind of project or started a project, those are good things to tell us about, shows us, again, what kinds of things you have been involved in and your passions. Again, a little more passions on service, so about 600 hours on average. Again, you know, the kinds of things that you have sought out in your journey so far really explain in the application the kind of physician that you are destined to be and the kinds of things that you are passionate about. Metrics, our average GPA is about a 3.7 and our average MCAT is around a 513. So next slide, please. So when we talk about these things in the application, so for those grades in MCAT that we just discussed, where would you apply to? So you probably want to look for schools who are in that range of average that you bring to your application. So that kind of fits you and you would fit the institution. For your essay, who are you and why do you want to be a doctor? So explain, you know, in your essays, tell us who you are, explain why you want to be a physician, what those passions that you have brought you to this place. Your experiences will be even more in depth on those things. So what has made you who you are up until this point, and are they reflective of the things that you have sought out? On the secondary, kind of look at those questions and see what that's telling you about the institution you're applying to. This will give you some good insight on what kinds of things they are passionate about. And if that fits what you're passionate about, it's probably a good fit for you to apply to and look and be a part of. Make sure you answer those secondary questions, reread them a couple of times and make sure you're answering what it's asking. As for gap years, a lot of people come to us as non-traditional students, which is actually a great thing, shows us growth and the things that you have done, again, in your journey to get to the place you are. And so the admissions timeline, we're not going to go through a whole lot on this. You can see the timeline. You can see where the things fall. In the next slide, my colleague Bridget is going to talk about our upcoming events, which are going to go into these in more depth. But you can see here from the timeline, there are some of the important dates as of November 1st. That is the AMCAS submit deadline, and deadline for secondaries is December 1st. But Bridget, I'll let you go into our upcoming event.
Thank you so much, Lori. And as we mentioned earlier, this event is our open house. We want you to come and get to know us and know our curriculum, maybe convince you to follow up with another event, maybe shoot us an email if you have more specific questions about UICOM and your journey to medicine. But we understand a lot of you have questions about the nuts and bolts of applying, more than what Lori may have just mentioned. What counts as hours? How do I write my personal statement? Things like that. So here's a list of our upcoming events. There is one for next week, and this is sponsored by the COM-UHP event. So that is our College of Medicine Urban Health Program event. And you can register online. Again, we'll drop this in the chat in just a second, or I'll have one of my colleagues do that. We'll put a link to all of these upcoming ones. Now, the COM-UHP's mission really is to recruit, to retain and graduate underrepresented students or URIM, I saw there was a question in the chat about that, into the health professions. And they want to give you some strategies for applying and preparing your personal statement and things like that. So definitely check out their upcoming webinar. But let's go ahead and turn to the Q&A session for now. I saw some of you were already taking advantage of the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That's what we're going to take a look at. So take a moment, submit your questions via the Q&A. Let me stop sharing screen here so I can invite all of our panelists back on stage. And let's take a look and see, maybe we can read some aloud. And if there's something that needs to be maybe personally typed in, we can do that too. So I see that there's a question or two about applying to UICOM. Do you apply to all 3 of these campuses, or can you pick which ones you're applying to? And Lori, I'll throw this to you to answer for us.
Okay, great question. You do apply to the institution, and then the campus assignments would happen after the acceptance of your candidacy. So at that point, we would look at your professional goals and line you up with the campus that best fits your application.
Great, thank you so much. I see another, you'll probably see my colleagues responding to your chats as they come in, but it's still fun to have you guys live here. But here's one that I think applies to a lot of people, and that's this whole virtual world that we've been forced into. What does that do for our shadowing? So we have virtual shadowing hours. Do those count? How do we incorporate that into our application? And Dr. Amiri, if I can have you speak to that a little bit about virtual shadowing and how it's counted.
Absolutely. So, you know, we know what you're going through, right? When we went into lockdown last year in March, that was the beginning of, you know, panic for all pre-med students because pretty much everything that you were able to do was shut down. So I would say if there's virtual shadowing opportunities that are available to you, you can take advantage of them. Just be specific and be careful about them, right? So if they're asking you to pay $50, you know, think about that twice before you engage with it. Make sure that it's more than a how to apply to medical school type of session. What we're looking for in the virtual shadowing experiences is really an opportunity where you will be sitting one-on-one with a physician. Sometimes they will have a patient with you. Sometimes they'll do something like grand rounds, and they will present a patient to you and talk to you about the clinical diagnosis. All of those are acceptable. Again, we understand that we're all living in a pandemic and those experiences have been curtailed for all of you. Look for the additions and most of the supplementals that you will get from schools like ours and many other schools that are asking you, how has the pandemic impacted your ability to to pursue these experiences. And I would say be very careful about sharing with us your understanding of clinical experiences because you have less of them now. So help us understand what your understanding is of clinical experience.
Thank you, very holistic. We have a reapplication webinar, but we also have more specific advice here now about those of you who've taken a break, maybe a gap year, for various reasons, to get more experience, to improve your GPAs. Are there any gap year programs to improve maybe your science GPA? Does UIC offer one? And Kia, if you don't mind taking this one, and anyone else, feel free to chime in if you've heard of some great programming as well.
Wonderful. So there are going to be a multitude of, you can either do a post-batch baccalaureate program, or you can do a master's in between on your gap year. It's really going to be up to you and what works for you, depending upon what your research experience is, your science GPA. I know some students will do a master's of science. There is a master's here that we offer at UIC, and you can also do a lot of other master's programs. So I know down at SIU they have one. So I would say really do your research and really figure out what program is going to work best for you to get to that end goal of applying to medicine.
And if I could just tag on to that, because I saw a couple of questions that came through about how do you calculate the GPA. So this is going to vary from school to school. we are we're a holistic program. And so we understand that you're people, you're just not GPA creators and test takers, right? So we know that life happens. We will look at the trajectory of your grades. So it is not uncommon for us to eliminate a freshman year when we're looking at the GPA of a student. And if you have completed a master's degree to enhance your academic credentials, we will ignore what happened as an undergraduate and we will just take the master's GPA into consideration. So we will look at what is most relevant, what's most recent. Okay, so that's not necessarily the case with all programs, and it's not necessarily what you see reflected in the GPA that we're reporting. The GPA that we report to you is the undergraduate GPA, right? So you might hear of a student who has a 2.2 that was admitted to UICOM. It wasn't the 2.2, okay? It was a master's that they completed with the 3.7 afterwards that let us know that they are able to handle the science that we'll ask of them.
Great clarifier. Speaking of metrics, we do have this question and there's different rumors running around, and Mindy, I'll have you answer this. Are you penalized for taking the MCAT multiple times if you're trying to improve your score?
Unmute first. So you are not necessarily penalized. We do look at and see all of the MCAT scores. For us, we usually look at the highest and most recent. Hopefully the most recent is the highest, but we do look at the highest score in evaluation of your application.
Wonderful. And again, our panelists, feel free to jump in. Lori, I'm going to kick it back to you. Does UIC only offer master's degree programs?
Well, the joint degree programs for medicine would only be the master's degree that we went over in the presentation.
Great, thank you. And UIC is an undergraduate institution as well. And so we have a lot of students who are studying downtown here with us, or a little bit out, we're a mile from downtown Chicago, who will then continue their education in our medical school, which is a little bit west of campus, for those of you unfamiliar with the Chicagoland area. And depending on their interest, they might try something a little different and head to Rockford and Peoria for a different experience as well. Talking about advising and other support programs, Dr. Amiri, is there one-on-one advising? How does advising work for a typical medical student?
So up until this point, we haven't been able to offer one-on-one advising because we weren't fully staffed, but now I'm excited. You see, we have a fully staffed office. So Bridget shared with you our webinars. We do have a reapplication webinar that's upcoming, and I apologize, I forget what the date is, but we're going to ask that you attend our reapplication webinar, which will be specific enough so that you can cater it to what your application needs, but broad enough so that everyone can take full advantage of it. And after you've attended our webinar, if you feel that you have something that's so unique to you that we were not able to cover, please email medadmit@uic.edu, and one of us will get back to you and set up a one-on-one session with you. There's one other question, Bridget, if you don't mind me taking it. The question was early decision. So we do have an early decision application process. You do need to email the admissions office to schedule a one-on-one appointment with me. Now, there isn't anything in the system that will prevent you from submitting an early decision application. But if you haven't had the meeting with me, we will not process you as an early decision applicant. We want you to meet with me because I want to see what you're bringing to the table. And I want to at least be able to guarantee that you are able to get an interview with us, right? Because if you apply early decision, you're not applying to any other programs. And so that puts you at a disadvantage if you apply to us, not applying to other programs and not being considered, right? So you'll meet with us, you will have your CV and you'll have your grades. The advantage of it is that you will be prioritized in the screening process. You will, if you are able to get an interview, you'll be interviewed amongst the first 2 interview days, and you will hear back from us as early as October 1st. The National Acceptance Day is October 15th, but you'll hear 2 weeks ahead of time. So those are all the advantages. I would say think long and hard about this. Make sure that our school is where you want to go, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, in a basket that you're not interested in having your eggs being held in, right?
Great. This question is even new to me. I know some schools have a 90-10 rule where only 10% of the class can be from out of state. Oh, I see. We're talking about caps. Does UIC have a similar rule for out of state? And I'll even add international students, since we have international students on the call today. And Lori, we'll circle back to you to talk a little bit about that. As a public institution, what can we offer?
Actually, Bridget, I was answering one of the questions in the chat. Can you restate it?
Just about our in-state, out-of-state caps. A lot of schools out there have this 90-10 rule, and they're very strict about the number of out-of-state students that can be accepted. Even international students can be capped. So what is our policy here?
We're very happy to tell you we do not have a cap. So we are a state institution. So as in Kia's slide you saw earlier, it is heavy Illinois, but that's because we're a state school, but we do not have a quota. We don't have any of those caps. So please don't worry about any of that. We would like to see your application. So we don't want to see certain states or not other states. So just please apply.
Wonderful. And let me go ahead and drop Dr. Amiri's email in there. For those of you who would like to reach out about early decision to have that conversation.
So the email should go to MedAdmit, not to me.
Oh, my apologies.
For the appointment, right? So Ms. Pedraza. Yeah, so Ms. Pedraza will schedule the appointment, and she is going to ask that you send your grades to me as well as your CV. Right. I don't see any other questions. I know my colleagues are furiously typing in the background just to make sure we end on time here. I'll allow another second or two to submit your questions. If it's something we can answer here in front of everyone, that's great. But if it's something that you would like to submit privately, we'll answer it privately, and you can always email that MedAdmit email that I dropped in there. That's an email we're all checking just to make sure your email isn't lost in the shuffle at any point. Oh, here's an additional one. Are the first couple of years graded by pass-fail? This is a great question. Or percentage letter grades? And Mindy, if you don't mind taking this one, it's different at every school, this pass-fail first 2 years situation, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, it is actually. So I've been told by our medical students, and one most recently that said that their medical school experience was much different than their undergrad experience. So with the block system and the way we do our curriculum, everything is pass-fail in your first phase. So we have the phases, and I'm sure you guys talked about that earlier. So we do a pass-fail in our early phases.
Wonderful. Here's another question, getting into the nitty-gritty of our application process. I hope to see you all at that application webinar, but what is the latest date to take the MCAT for this 2022 cycle? And Kia, if you don't mind, I'll throw that to you. I know you manage our website and you have a lot of that information already on there from Casper scores and MCATs. We do require the MCAT at our institution, so Kia, I'll throw that one to you.
Okay, so this is kind of a twofold question, right? So the latest date that we will accept the MCAT is in November, that November MCAT date. However, one of the things we like to tell students is that, yes, you can submit an MCAT. If it's a retake, that's very fine. You can submit that and retake that MCAT in November. However, we always encourage students to get their MCAT done as soon as possible and submit their application as soon as possible, so that way you can be in one of those first rounds of the applications that are sent to the medical schools. As schools get, over 7,000 applications, which is what we got last year, and students are submitting their applications in June, and if you submit your application in November, yes, we will absolutely review it, but it may be a little difficult to get to, and the process may be a little bit delayed for you. So if you have any questions at all or any additional questions about that, please feel free to email us at our MedAdmit email, which has been dropped into our chat.
I would like to add a little bit to what Kia just mentioned. So the last MCAT that we'll take is the last one that's offered in the calendar year of 2021. So I don't want to stick with the last published one, which is in September or October usually, because we're still in the pandemic and because they may have to cancel and add at the end. So don't restrict yourself to the last one that you see now, but it must be in the calendar year of the year where you're submitting the application. We will not accept January MCAT dates. And I know that hurt some students this past year, but that all has to do with the timing of our application process.
Wonderful. We have probably 9 more minutes. So our question now is about learning communities. And I love the person who submitted this had the capital COM for COM, because that's how we like to refer to our learning communities. Can I ask someone on screen here to talk a little bit more about that? What is that structure like? And I don't know if Lori and Mindy, you have more experiences with this, and Dr. Mary, feel free to chime in. What is the student experience when they're a part of that?
So I'll say that this is like the Harry Potter houses. Okay, so we split students up into advising houses, randomly distributed as much as possible. So you get as much of the very rich cohort that Kia explained to you a little bit earlier in our slides. Each community is led by a faculty advisor who will be your mentor along the way, your first official professional mentor along the way, right? So let's say you're paired with a med-peds physician, but you're interested in neurology. That faculty member will be your connection to the other faculty members who could guide you in that arena. There's also a staff support person who will be your Sherpa along all of the paperwork that is part of medical school to make sure that you're meeting your deadlines. The other nice piece of it is that you have people, right? So these are your peers, and these are the peers that you will be advancing through the medical school curriculum with. Now, again, this is our first year on the Chicago campus. The other campuses, I think, have had them for a little bit of time. And Mindy is actually one of the Manor advisors, so I'll ask Mindy to give a little bit of her insights as well. But, as you're going through the process, then there'll be students who are coming in after you. For you all who are applying now, there will actually be a cohort who started before you, right? So you come in with an already set of peers who are your peers. Now in your year, there's people who are ahead of you and people who are coming in behind you as well. And Mindy, I don't know what you want to add to it. You probably have a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. And coincidentally, we had one of those meetings last night, so I have some very recent experience. So on the Peoria campus, our communities are called manors. So we have different manors, and students are divided into those manor groups with exactly the same setup as Dr. Mary had highlighted. Throughout your mentorship, they do have some scheduled activities that they have. So there's monthly or bi-monthly manor meetings in which all of the manors get together and do some sorts of activities. So as I mentioned, we had a manor meeting last night. Last night we had a panel, a match panel. So all of those students who are M1s and M2s got to hear from, and M3s got to hear from M4s who recently matched into whatever specialty. And we had panels of those recently matched students talk about their residency application process and why they chose the panel that they, or the residency that they had gone into. But then in addition to that, we also organize somewhat casual social events. So they're planning to do like volunteer work. I think our particular manor is going to be doing some stocking at a food pantry in the next month or so. So we do not just professional and academic things, but we do social and just kind of get together for fun kind of things as well.
Wonderful. It'd be great if you had the scarves, just like the Harry Potter houses as well. And so let's see, with the time we have left, we have a specific question a little bit more about the GPA. Lori, if you don't mind, I'll throw this to you. Now, the GPA that we talk about, we keep saying 3.7, 3.7. Is this science GPA? Is this general GPA? I'm sure applicants, especially this time around, would like to get more details on that.
Yeah, so the GPA we're talking about is cumulative. We do look at science GPA, but overall cumulative, the averages that you gave us, or the averages that we had in the presentation, were cumulative averages.
Great, thank you. We have a question now about the timeline for the MD-MPH program. And Dr. Mary, I don't know if you're still on to be able to explain that timeline a little bit better for those who are interested in the call.
Sure. So as Bridget was mentioning this to you, all of our master's MD programs are 5 years, except for the MD MPH, which is actually approved for 4 years. The application to the program is still post-matriculation. And it looks like starting with the curriculum with next year, there may be an opportunity for students to start the curriculum as M0s before they've started medical school with us. But right now it'll be that it'll go hand in hand with the curriculum as students join us as first-year medical students. And basically you'll be taking some courses online because it is available to students on all of the campuses. And some of the courses that you take in medical school will count as electives towards the MPH and vice versa. And that's how we can get it all squeezed into 4 years instead of 5. We do not have a schematic of the curriculum yet, but that should be available soon. So as soon as it's available, I know the College of Public Health will post it and we will as well. So stay tuned on our websites.
Sticking with the application process, we have a question about prerequisites, and we do get this question a lot, especially for those who are coming back to medicine after a few years, a couple gap years, or an entire career away from school. What about these prerequisites? Do they expire? Do I have to retake them, especially the ones with labs? All the prerequisites are on our website, but Mindy, if you don't mind, do our prerequisites expire?
Once taken, always kept. So no, they don't technically expire. However, though, if biology was 10 plus years ago or 5+ years ago, and you haven't been in a career field or you haven't done things where you've used some of that knowledge over the last few years, it would be highly recommended to maybe audit a course and or just go on to Amazon, order yourself a biology textbook and start reading. But technically they don't expire, but you do want to have a fresh knowledge of those things, especially if you're getting ready to prepare for the MCAT.
Just some light bedtime reading with my biology
Absolutely.
book. And doing the old trick of putting it under my pillow so that it just continues to ooze into my brain, even when I'm sleeping, so I'm ready for my first year. We have a question about our classes. Are they lecture-based? Are they patient problem-based? And what are these other campuses? Are we streaming the lectures to these other campuses? How does that work? I'm not sure who on the panel now wants to take that one, but talking a little bit more about classes and structure.
I can take some of it, and we can, and everybody else can chime in. So a lot of flipped classrooms, a lot of TBL, which is team-based learning. And if you're not familiar with that, we can go into that a little more detail, or I'm not sure if that's coming up in a future presentation. And then the campuses, we do have recorded, all lectures are recorded on all 3 campuses. However, all 3 campuses also have live instruction. So what that means is Rockford and Peoria do have live instruction. We have full faculty, but all 3 campuses are recorded. So if I'm in Rockford and I want to listen to a presentation or a lecture from Chicago or Peoria, I can do that. So you are not restricted to the campus that you're on, in that you can get the content from the other campuses. But we do have full faculty, open door policies, so faculty are very accessible.
Lori, I'll just chime in on with the advent of COVID and everybody going into the land of Zoom. We've actually also had several tri-campus sessions where all 3 of the campuses were logged in together simultaneously for a core case or for a presentation. So in addition to watching recordings, you can also be part of a live session with all the other campuses as well.
Great, thank you. And we have time for about one more question. And I will say a lot of our other, if you see in any of our upcoming presentations, hear from our students or from the students' perspective, that's when we really like to bring our students here, so that instead of hearing us talk about kind of behind the scenes, what we're looking for in applicants, what we're looking for, trying to tell you a little bit more about the school, you get to hear from the students. Here's what it's like to be in a TBL. Here's what it's like to participate via maybe classes in Zoom nowadays. Hopefully be different as we get closer to the fall. But I'll ask this final question here. And it's really about obtaining a master's, maybe at another institution. Does that negatively impact someone's application? What if it was in, master's in sciences, or even a master's in administration? I know a lot of people these days are going to health administration, which is such a different perspective on medicine. Does having a different master's negatively impact someone's application? Dr. Amiri, do you want to maybe speak to this more closely?
I can. This is a loaded question. So the question is, why did you do the master's degree, right? So if you picked up a master's because you wanted to enhance your GPA, an MHA, an MPH does not help us understand that you can do science better. So it's ineffective, right? If you took it because you wanted to show us that you can do science, it does not hurt you or help you. We have to ignore it because it's not giving us what we need, which is how do you do in science? But if you took it because you had interest in it and you see yourself going into healthcare administration and you had a decent GPA, then that's great, right? That's added value because that's an additional experience that you have. That's knowledge that you will bring to our learning environment, and it will be a benefit. So I guess in the last remaining minutes, what I want to say is anything that you do outside the ordinary, because we're getting a lot of these questions and it's really hard to answer them because you're asking very specific questions. They should be deliberate, they should be intentional, and what is the desired outcome of having that, right? So if you are taking a master's because you didn't get into medical school this year, but you have a 4.0 and a micro major, getting a master's doesn't take care of what was missing, right? Because you're giving us more of what you had. So be thoughtful about these additional things that you do. Bridget, I'll hand it back to you if there's time for a couple other questions.
Since we still have, a significant number of people on, I will continue asking them. And I'll also drop our email in there for those of you who are jumping off. I know that, let me type really quickly here. For those of you jumping off, I know that our email probably got lost in the chat function. And you can email us specific questions, we'll answer them, and we'll take into account your situation as well. So we do have a question about clinical work. So if you're taking clinical work that's volunteer or clinical work that's paid, can you get credit for the paid clinical work that you're doing? And Lori, if I can throw it to you to maybe answer that, how does that work?
Sure. If you're getting paid for clinical work, that's great for us and great for you. But any clinical work is make sure you put all that on the application, because again, it shows us where you've been spending your time, and it just your path to medicine. That's all in that. But yes, we do not. It doesn't matter if it's paid or not paid.
Wonderful. Well, I know we've gone a little over our time. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to say goodbye on behalf of our entire staff here. Like I said, this webinar is going to be recorded and we'll send it to you about 2 weeks afterwards, so you can go back and get that information. Wait a minute, what spotlight concentration was I interested in, etc. So you'll definitely be hearing from us. And if we don't hear from you, feel free to jump on to another webinar. Thank you, Kia, for dropping that in the chat for everyone. And we hope to see you this application cycle or in the next ones. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in our next webinars.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone.